Are You Not Entertained with Jared Pike and Bo Yoakley. We're from the Sage Plant Studios. Special guest today, director, executive producer, and he does everything, really. Writer,
all the stuff.
Actor, everything. Gary Wheeler, welcome to the show.
How's it going, guys?
Going wonderful, buddy. Appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, I don't know so much about acting. I always try and talk my way in, and I've kind of realized that my skill set is basically that of, like, I can play a coach. That's all I can do,
You can wear a cowboy hat and sling a gun a little bit.
Oh no, I'm the one who ends up on the cutting room floor all the time.
But I've seen your photos, man. We've been on set so many times. I've seen photos of you in character and in wardrobe and everything. So you're on the cusp. You're like Peter Berg. We were just talking about him before on air. Like a Peter Berg. He'll be executive producer and directing things, but he always has like a little piece in the pie.
Peter Berg was a really good actor, and
yes.
and then jumped over. It's funny you say that because I was, one of my good buddies, Jeremy Guana, JP, is in American Primeval, and
I just finished watching it last night.
Yeah, so he plays Tall Shadow. And he's one of the natives, and he's just a good friend of mine. Love him to death. And I was actually just texting with him about Peter Berg, not like 10 minutes ago. Of course, I'm a Friday Night Lights guy, so I love Friday Night Lights. So,
and I guess that's where Peter Berg got his connection with Taylor Kitsch, because they've worked together a lot. They've worked together on Lone Survivor and obviously Friday Night Lights. And then in this, he was just phenomenal. We had Kim Coates on a couple weeks ago. Interviewed him about American Primeval, but that show is amazing. If you haven't
Taylor
seen it.
Kitsch is always Tim Riggins to me.
I kept waiting for him to throw a football, but he said, I guess
he was always Tim Riggins. He was amazing on that show. But I haven't finished. But I told Jeremy, JP, I texted him. I said, when you showed up, I squealed like a teenage, like a Swiftie.
It's like when you see someone on TV that you can't help but be like super excited, like, oh my God, yeah, I know that, it's always such a fun thing for me too. If I know someone who's going to be in it, like we just saw Homestead with Bailey.
Yeah. Sure.
Billy Chase. And the whole time it's like, I love Bailey. He's just the greatest guy. He was on the pod too. He's just the greatest guy. I took Jared to go see that as well. And that movie was phenomenal.
Well, that one, Bailey and Neil, and then Kevin Lawson, who's friends of mine. And
do you know Jesse Hutch?
I do. Jesse and Manny, Jesse, who you and I had lunch with, Bo.
Yes, we sure did. We sure did not too long ago. Yeah, Manny, he did great. I messaged him, was like, good job, buddy. He did a great job. It's a great movie. And Jill Wagner, she's going to be in the TV series, coming up.
And I we're good. She was a guest on your show.
She was. Yeah, she was. She's phenomenal.
Yeah, she's from our area. Where are you from? Or where do you live now?
Charlotte.
Okay, yeah. So she's from right outside of Winston-Salem. And so I interviewed her on our morning show 14 years ago when she was hosting Wipeout.
Yeah.
And then when we saw, the movie that she was doing and she had this, or the show Lioness, we, asked her to come on and then on our morning show, then also on the podcast, and kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. She's the best. But
it was her birthday yesterday. It's funny. You're hitting all the things. I just texted with Bailey like 20 minutes ago, and I know
I hacked your phone. I'm looking for everyone you message. I'm like keep track of everything you're doing.
We'll send that link we just sent you to Bailey, Jill.
Let's get
Jesse.
Everybody on. Everybody on one big screen.
I think we have 6 at once. That won't be a disaster at all. Now, before we got on with you, Bo was giving me a hard time because as a grown man, I love taking a bath, and I try to take a bath every day. And he thinks that's ridiculous, but I just think it's the most relaxing thing. I have the jetted tub. I'm not bragging.
You can't hide money,
Yeah, right. I had the, I put some bubbles in there. I'm not gonna lie. Actually, I just put soap in there. I hit the jetted tub, turns into a bubble bath.
Does that not strike you as bizarre, Gary? I'm a shower guy. He's a bath guy. We're like, let's ask Gary. Shower, bath.
Oh, I'm 100% a shower guy.
Thank you.
I'm at enough.
It's a red flag if a grown man is getting a bath every day. It's like, what are you doing?
So I've been known to have a story or two, right? So I'll tell you this story. So in my early days, 2025 marks my 30th year in the film business, right? So I've had 30 years of making a living, and Bo will tell you that's really hard, right? You know, in the film industry. One of my first experiences was I had a friend who was going to raise money, and I was working for this production company. It was literally my first thing in 1995. I started, and so we went on a fundraising tour. This is pre-cell phones, and we went all up the northeast of the United States and into Canada, and we were doing this like fundraising donation tour for these films. And the guy I was traveling with, he was supposed to be setting all these things up, and he was not good at it. And so we would literally pull over at a rest stop, and he would jump on a payphone and make a phone call. Hey, we're going to be in this city. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I had we spent 3 weeks on the road doing this. We raised barely enough money to pay for the trip, you know? And then, but the low point was we showed up in Boston, and I could tell that he had called a friend of his from college who got his mom and his sister to come, and they gave us some, you know, a couple $100 for gas or whatever, you know, as part of the fundraising. And all they had was a bathtub in this house. And I remember in the middle of this trip, I'm sitting there taking a bath in this failure of a trip, and I just said to myself, it doesn't get any lower than this. And so
I've hit rock bottom.
So that's what I equate with the bathtub. You know,
I'm the same way. No, listen, I like a hot tub. It's different if you're in a hot tub with some people and you're talking.
It's different.
But to go and just get in your bathtub at home for an hour, because he'll take like an hour bath every day.
I conduct business in the bath.
It's nuts, because I'll hear him pouring his water, and he's on the phone. I was like, "Are you taking a bath?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh my god!"
And then he'll hear me hit the jets, and you can barely hear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's very relaxing. I played a lot of sports growing up, and there was nothing better than afterwards taking a.
You mean when you were 12?
No, up until I was 18. He played soccer.
Oh yeah, just soccer.
Yeah, but no, which is fine. But I'm not ashamed of it. I know it's not popular, and you know what? I know people want to conserve water. I get out of the bath, I go in the shower, and I wash off. So it's like.
And then you drink your bath water though. So
yeah, I do.
You do conserve it that way,
right? And I boil it for dinner, but it's fine. It's okay. Enough about that.
Gary, you've done so much, dude. I mean, I knew about you. Obviously, we worked together. You know, you were producer for Country Roads Christmas, a film I was in. You know, producer, writer, director for Blue Ridge. Things I've done. But you know, it's like asking your favorite child. But I have to ask. It's one of those questions. Like, is there something specifically, and don't say Country Roads Christmas, that you're like, this is on my mantle as like my favorite thing I want to do, and I want to do more things like this.
It's funny. I get asked that and a lot, and I, you know, like a lot of people, you set out with a dream to do something, you know, and when you hit my age, you go, how did I get here, right? You know, because it's a long season to get here, and so I actually got to the point where I didn't remember, and it was just this morning. I was trying to remember exactly the number of films that I've done, and I couldn't remember. And it was 40-ish, you know.
You have 48 credits, Gary.
Give
yourself 48.
Some of those are probably thank yous, you know. And like podcast interviews, but it's 40 movies and two seasons of Blue Ridge at least, you know. And then I've had movies that I was supposed to do that fell apart, and then I wrote scripts, but then they eventually got made and things like that, you know. But so I've always tried to have kind of a Mount Rushmore of my projects, and then I've sort of broken them down into categories, you know, like, okay, so what's my favorite Christmas movie, you know, not including Country Roads Christmas, but what's my favorite
of course
Christmas movie?
Yeah.
What's my favorite Western that I've done, you know, what's my favorite, you know, I've done some things in the faith-based space, like what's my favorite there, you know, and then what's, and so I have some, and I'd probably, my Mount Rushmore has probably become a top 10, and so
we won't ask you to narrow it down then. We just don't know if you had something off the top of your head.
Well, and what I would say is, at the end of the day, the thing that I'm doing right now with Blue Ridge, I feel like everything leads to the next thing, right? Yeah. And so I think what I'm doing with Blue Ridge, I'm getting to make a procedural show, which I love. Like I love, all of I grew up watching first off, I grew up watching Westerns. Then I grew up watching like Murder, She Wrote with my mom, and all those things. And then, I love kind of classic television. So it's a classic procedural. I grew up in Charlotte. I've somehow made 40 movies and never lived outside of the East Coast as a filmmaker, which I think there aren't that many who have made it this long. And I get to do this. I went to college at App State, so in the mountains of North Carolina. Nice, so I get to make a show. I get to run a show that's set in the mountains, that is shot in Charlotte, that stars, I'm a huge fan of the show. Chuck, Sarah Lancaster's in it. I'm a huge fan of Longmire. A. Martinez is in it. I'm a huge That Thing You Do fan. Jonathan Sheck is our lead, So it's all these things. So what I'm doing right now, Blue Ridge is probably my, the thing that I'm having the most fun doing. That being said, I love Christmas in the Smokies. I did with Jill. I love a movie called Mountaintop, which we shot here and it's probably that one's probably the most me, of all the movies I've made. And so I've got a few.
Yeah. Well, it goes without saying. I mean, you've done so much. You've written, directed, all these many things. But, I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to filmmaking from the start to finish process. And so it took me years to figure out, like, where does it even start? How does an idea come to life? How do you get it on camera? And you've been from the origin of something and all the way through to the very finished product. Like you just said, you're editing, Blue Ridge Season 2 right now. What would you say, like, in walking through from start to finish, just a brief overview of what it looks like as far as you need to get a script first, you need to attach people, you need to get funny. What would you say is like kind of a blueprint for someone who was going to be looking to create something, a film or TV show or something like that?
Well, it's interesting because I don't think there's any right way to do it, Bo. And if you heard all the stories of how every film was made, and it's just some people get attachments from actors and then go, make the movie that way. Some people start with a really great book, get a script, raise the money, yada yada yada. I think for me, and maybe it's just my personality in that I have I'm a go-getter in the sense that I set a goal and I go for it, and so for me, it's just picking this thing. This is a story I'm going to tell. I'm going to be very focused on it. And I want to do it, and then committing to production dates and kind of just moving forward little by little. That being said, I'm a huge reader. I set reading goals every year. I think I read 70 books last year. One amazing book on the making of The Godfather, which is my second favorite movie of all time, which is Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli. It's an amazing book on the making of it. So there are some great books on filmmaking that I would recommend people on how to start. There's a great, my favorite screenplay book is Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. There's a great book from one of the producers of Yellowstone called A Pound of Flesh. His name's Art Linson. And it's all about how to produce movies. There's a great book on working with actors called I'll Be in My Trailer by John Badham. It has the best acting stories I've ever had. So there's different ways to do it. That's a long answer for a non-answer, really, Bo.
No, it's stuff. Well, that's the thing. Is there is so many different paths. It's like saying, I get asked the question, how do you become an actor? It's like, oh boy, okay, that's a big question. But there are certain, guidelines you can follow, And so as far as, starting a project start to finish, let's say you wanted to start something tomorrow. You have a story you want to tell. What do you do?
Yeah, so here's an interesting thing. So I had one of my first mentors in the business was this gentleman who retired from Wall Street very young, and then eventually ended up managing a fund that grew to be in the billions. And so he was an executive producer on one of our first movies. And one of the things he said to me was, he said, Gary, your business is the easiest business I've ever seen in how to figure out what to do. He said, you just kind of start from where it's going to go and then work backwards. So the first question I would ask anybody, and I always ask everybody, is who is the audience for this project? And so if you're going to make a niche movie, say it's a Western, right? Like if you're going to make a Western and what the story you want to tell is a Western, well, work backwards from that. Where is that going to go? Westerns, unless you get Kevin Costner attached or somebody big, you're probably not going to go on multi-thousand screens, So then where are you going to go? Is it a TV Western? Is it a smaller Western? So then you kind of work your way backwards from there. And then you say, well, what I really want to do is I have this farm that's in, outside of Wilkesboro, and I want to shoot a Western, or like they did that movie Old Henry with Tim Blake Nelson, and they had a farm, they wanted to make a Western, and they knew that it could be one location. So then that set the budget at a certain level, and they just kind of work backwards from there. So that's the first thing I would do. I'd figure out who's the audience for the project that you want to tell. And if you think the audience is everybody, we'll go to Marvel, because they're the only, like most people are clueless as to who their audience is. And the more you can define who your audience is as a filmmaker, the more success you'll have.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Godfather is your second favorite movie. Well, what is your first?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
What a classic answer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
nerd.
To Kill a Mockingbird. It's like Apocalypse Now. It's like these are great, but mine are more modern. I'm like Gladiator, Braveheart, 300. Like these are my kind of.
He's so insecure in his masculinity. He could like.
I see a theme.
Has a female in it.
No, it's like if you could do any, if I could do any movie, it's like I'd recast myself as Russell Crowe, Gladiator, or King Leonidas in 300. I mean, those to me are the pinnacle of like A-list perfect roles.
Did you say Braveheart? Was Braveheart one of yours on there too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's on Mount Rushmore of favorite. I think because those movies are so influential in like my own life. And so I think because that's part of the reason why I want to become an actor. So for me, the full circle moment would be doing something that actually inspired me to do something like that in the first place, versus, something that maybe not, I wasn't raised on anything but that kind of stuff,
Yeah, for me, it's more like Forrest Gump, Anchorman.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dumb and Dumber.
Forrest Gump, Anchorman. You went Forrest Gump, Anchorman. Forrest Gump's Anchorman's great. I just love him.
And they made Man on Fire.
I love him. Yeah. I love movies. And so I just love, when I was 16 years old, I just made the decision in Matthews, North Carolina, that I was going to make movies. And I used to go when I had my very first job as a camp counselor, I took my very first paycheck and bought a VCR for the family. And I just love movies. And then I think probably with my third paycheck, I brought a second VCR and I started, bogarting them and stealing them, and recording them. And so I used to watch 3 movies a day every summer, and I just love movies. And so, and I keep a top 10 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're the same way. Like I said, that's how our podcast got started. We're just like, we love movies. We love talking about them and breaking them down because they have a huge cultural, changing opportunity. With every film comes out, TV series, it has an opportunity to shift culture in a way, and it has an opportunity to make people have a new light or understanding on things. And the things that you've been involved in, obviously, and I've been involved in, they're great, and I love everything I've done. But obviously, there's things I want to elevate to and evolve to doing, beyond the things I've already done. So for you, you have Blue Ridge now. If you were to say, what you ideally would want to do, what world would you want to play in, say in the next 10, 20 years, that would be something that maybe be a little, is it different than what you're kind of been doing, or would be more the same?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's something that I'm at. Those are questions I ask myself a lot. And I think I love sports. I would love to do movies like Hoosiers and Rudy and Remember the Titans.
Hoosiers. Great.
and Breaking Away and things like that, that I'd love to be involved in telling a really great true story. I've done a couple true stories, but I'd love to do one. I'd love to do more Westerns. I love the genre and even a bigger palette, like American Primeval, those kind of things, Horizon, stuff like that. They're just really, really big in scope. There's some great books. As a reader, I'd love to do some more bigger in scope things. And I've had a couple movies recently. I've never been a guy who laments other people's work, because I think it gets in your. I try not to let people rent space in my head, and so I don't look at other people's work and go, man, I wish I could have done that. Too much. I think it's harder on actors because you have to project yourself, Bo, in that regard. But I think as a filmmaker, only bad things happen when you do that. That being said, there've been a couple movies in the last few years that are the size and scale that I went, man, that would have been a good one to do, and I could do. Like, they were right off of me. One was this Christmas. I saw the best Christmas pageant ever, and loved it. And Dallas Jenkins, who did The Chosen, is a friend of mine, and I just loved it. And I thought, man, I would like to do something like that.
Yeah, we just had Elizabeth Tabish on.
Yeah,
who's in that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, she did a movie with a really good friend of mine that's coming out in a couple weeks.
Between Borders?
Yeah. So
my
friend
screener on it's excellent.
Yeah, my friend Mark Freiberger is the writer, producer, director of that.
Oh, it's heavy, but it's so well done. Yeah.
Yeah. She's good in Best Christmas Pageant, but it's a movie that I thought, like, oh, that went out to a wide audience, but it's still a small story. And so.
Well, so you may not know specifically you want to replace this director with you. Like, I wish I did Interstellar. You wouldn't want to do that. But let's say from a director standpoint, there's got to be a Mount Rushmore of actors that you want to direct. You've definitely had that list. You're like, if I could direct this person, or if I could write something for this person.
Yeah, for the longest time, it was probably Robert Duvall. And that I actually called his office once, to try and get him in a project. And in 2005, and he was on a set. We were actually casting it. My thing is, a lot of the people I remember, Gene Hackman, like, I love these guys, and
old school guys, yeah,
they're not working as much anymore. Yeah. And so those are the kind of people that I think to myself, I'm like, man, it would be fun to have had a chance to work with somebody like that. And Duvall's still out there. I did you guys are movie aficionados, and I did a movie with Robert Forster from Jackie Brown, who plays Max Cherry in Jackie Brown. I did a movie with him in 2009. And I just loved it. Everybody called him Bob, and Bob Forster. And he gave everybody he really liked a letter opener as a wrap gift. He had all these letter openers. And so I always thought I would get to work with him again. And I really wanted to. And he passed away in 2018 or 2019. And so I have those kind of things. I like to work with Dennis Quaid. I love some of the really Dennis Quaid stuff, like Breaking Away and stuff like that. I think it really, they're just really great stories. And so he's somebody, I think. Costner. I love the Western genre, right?
Yeah.
And so
why do you think the Western genre has had a resurgence? It seemed like for years Hollywood didn't want to touch it. It seemed like it was box office poison, or it's too risky.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I don't know if Yellowstone is really